Washington on his first official trip as South African president, and also speaking at the United Nations as South Africa's president, obviously, after all those years in prison, was just an incredible time journalistically. And then as we saw the political party creation after 1994, the political dispensation in South Africa, and seeing wonderful young people coming into the SABC and being able to be part of a process that trained people in television storytelling, and great people that you see on air today were part of this process between 1994 and maybe 1998, 99, when really there was just a blank sheet or a blank canvas in what the public broadcaster was going to be.
I think you've given us clues. My next question, and it really speaks about the role of the public broadcaster and what it has been able to do over time. What's been your experience of it? I've worked in private media and public broadcast, and I've always been deeply enriched by the work of the public broadcaster, much more than the commercial stations. It was enjoyable, but there's, I think, a sense of purpose that I found much more enriching in public broadcasting. What was your experience, and what do you think the role of the public broadcaster has been over time?
Yeah, I think the really interesting part happening just before 1994 and then post 1994 is there were really interesting stakeholders and players in the field of public broadcasting in South Africa. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation was here, the CBC, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation were here, and they were all part of a process trying to help us. And I was fairly junior. I became the manager of television training because I'd stepped out of the news department in order to help with this process of creating the storytellers of tomorrow that would be part of the public broadcaster rather than the state broadcaster, which the SABC was, without a doubt, the voice of the National Party before. And that's maybe just a line that everyone must never forget, is when one political party controls the narrative, it becomes a terrible environment for anybody to operate in. So I think, Peter, you also sum it up correctly, that if broadcasting is in your blood, the SABC will always be your spiritual home. And I regard the SABC as my spiritual home to this day. Even I'd left, more than 25 years ago, I regard the SABC absolutely as my spiritual home. Broadcasting is in my blood. But the second thing about that is the fact that protecting the integrity of an environment that really should be the voice of the people, which is what the process was between 1994 and 1999 in creating this format of journalism that allowed people to question politicians, to a point, because at the end of the day, they were put into power by people who voted for them. And keeping politicians accountable to the people that they vote for is a very, very objective form of free speech. So, and it doesn't mean you need to trash anybody. You just simply go onto the ground and state and tell the story and how it impacts ordinary people. And so I think when it comes to being the public broadcaster, every journalist that works at the SABC, in my view, should, and I've seen many examples day and night, should always keep in mind that at the end of the day, their boss is not a political party. Their boss is the constituents of South Africa who voted politicians into positions of accountability. And I think as a public broadcaster, the role of a broadcaster really is and should be to represent the people that want the leaders that they vote into power to be accountable, and I think then it's job done.
Gary, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for your service at the public broadcaster, and I look forward to you growing your hair again to the back in the day.
Yeah, I shall do.
Thanks so much, Gary. That's Gary Alfonso, who spent many, many years at the SABC as a reporter, and he told the stories there, fond memories that he has of the time that he spent with the public broadcaster doing work, important work, during a very important time in the country's history.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
So, as we continue this coverage, we're going to be talking to former SABC Technical Director of News and Special Projects, Mr. Paul Molefe. And I think one of my fondest memories, as I was sharing with Peter, didn't finish that point, was how I appreciated very much being part of the SABC News team on the radio side, that is, being thrown in the deep end. We literally had to learn how to write, how to edit, how to present, how to cut sound, how to put sound together. It was a full production learning curve that you really just had to do. And now, later on in years, you realize how much of a contribution that has had and the powerful role that it places you as a journalist to be able to do literally every part of the production process when it comes to news. But let's talk, as we mark more than 7 decades of the SABC channel, SABC News and Current Affairs, looking at how the public broadcaster continues to be a leading platform to inform, educate, and entertain millions across the country, the continent, as well as abroad. We're joined by former SABC Technical Director for News and Special Projects, Paul Molefe. Paul, thank you for making time for us. How are you this Thursday?
Very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us. Lots of memories that we all have as we keep looking back in terms of how SABC News has been a platform and a foundation for all of our careers, and we continue to work for the broadcaster. But 75 years of SABC News for you, what are your fondest memories?
I think one of my fondest memory, I must say, ma'am, that we went live in Cape Town on sea using submarine with Leanne Manas was there, Lydia Plakis was our executive producer, and the airtime guys, I dropped my head for them. That broadcast lasted for 2 hours with nothing from the technical side. It was one of the best production ever, And apart from that, I think for one to be given that honor to direct the funeral of the late former President Nelson Mandela with 21 cameras. And that was actually a deciding factor for me, because I was warned by Jimmy Matthews, who was our head at that time, that if you make a slight mistake, we are not going to discipline you. We're going to fire you. And, I had to trust God, went on fasting for 2 days. That, Lord, this is the moment of truth. And let me tell you, the SABC, became a pendulum of the rest of broadcasters, from CNN, BBC, China News, and indeed, entire diaspora and the world. It was so good that after finishing, it was just tears and tears of joy from each one of us, because we knew that, SABC was on the block here to say, can you do it, Africa? And because we look at Africa with an African perspective, that's why we did it all. So that's one moment I will forever cherish.
Absolutely. When it comes to radio broadcasts, so outside radio broadcasts, as we refer to them as OBs, there's certain things that definitely stand out, because you go from a different atmosphere of studio to that of physical and real-time audience and guest interaction. You talk on the role of the SABC and how it's played its part in giving information and analysis on matters pertaining to the African continent. Of course, we can be proud that we're sitting here as Channel Africa Radio. But how have such broadcasts contributed to the emancipation of Africans, in your view, and showcasing what this continent has to offer to the world?
Ma'am, let me tell you, at the inauguration of African Union, for the first time, the late Muammar Gaddafi was here. Yasser Arafat, the late, was here. Fidel Castro, who's late now, was there. And these gave us courage to say, indeed, South Africa, we are truly blessed. And one thing that stands out for me, again, if I may, we were assigned with Sean Crowley to go and train journalists, from Rwanda after the genocide. And our assignment was 2 weeks only. But you won't believe it, that it lasted for 3 months, 6 days. Training the journalists, training the directors, talk shows, current affairs, and radio, how important radio is, because it is the one that will always be a trendsetter. When television comes in, radio has already exhausted 5 important, angles on any other story. And I salute SABC because we used to work together, totally professional, with Lester Ridley and the other radio guys. Whatever we did, even when we planned, we used to plan together with radio. And we used to share ideas, and that's why it actually brought in many journalists who were in radio. It was easy for them to make a transition to television, and there was no ego. A presenter knew that the ordinary makeup lady makes me look good, but it's part and parcel of the formidable chain that every person plays an important part. Mm. And if I may, there's one thing that I pick up. We were in Cuba with our foreign editor, Sophie Mokoena, Tando Maseko, and Franz Bruce. Mm. And I pick up this comment, the leader unknown, but it simply says, if you have been to a symposium and forget about the people that has put you up there, then arrogance erases your legacy. But humility immortalizes that legacy. So today, because we have been humble towards one another, that is why today, one is participating in this mammoth celebrata of 75 years. Yes. And I pray to God I must stay humble, and I'm proud that we handed the baton to the next generation with ease. So today we are very, very, very happy that in both radio and television, we have left behind people who are credible, people with character, people with amazing expertise. And, even today, this morning, and we brought some tears on me.
I could feel that, and we could all feel that, and we really appreciate you as far as the legacy you've left behind as well. We will always appreciate you for that. Dr. Paul, we're completely out of time, so we have to leave it there. You know how radio works and how television works. At least I don't have to explain much, but thanks so much for your time.
You're welcome, man. You're welcome. Thank you, dear. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ndate Paul. Paul Molefe, the former SABC Technical Director for News and Special Projects, looking back at 75 years of the SABC News. You can feel the emotion as he speaks, and he got teary-eyed a little bit there in terms of this mammoth celebration that we are observing and seeing and being a part of as the South African Broadcasting Corporation. Time for news headlines.